And we're off because I have to do it. It has been requested, therefore, I shall honor the request to say, and we're off. It's the All Dolphins podcast. It's Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. I am joined again today by Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Hi, Perk.
Hey, how are you doing, Poop? I'm doing good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. I just finished a story that has not posted yet for MiamiDolphinsOnTheSide.com that will, as at the time we're taping this, about a fun fact. That's like the Dolphins are facing the New York Jets in Week 14, just like they did last year. The Dolphins will bring a 5-7 record into the game, just like last year. The New York Jets will go into the game with a 3-9 record. Go ahead, Perk. Come on, follow along.
Just like last year.
There you go.
I've been paying attention to the show.
See, there you go. I hope those of you watching at home were following along and were able to predict what was coming next. But that's kind of weird. The Dolphins won that game for Week 14 game last year, of course, 32-26 in overtime on a touchdown pass from Tua Tagovailoa to Jonnu Smith, who is not enjoying life very much these days with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but that's a different story that we addressed earlier. Today, we're talking about the Miami Dolphins, who are riding a 3-game winning streak, still on the periphery of playoff discussion. Not that it stopped anybody. And the first injury report of the week came out on Wednesday, and nobody missed practice. There were 3 guys who were limited, including Darren Waller with quote-unquote rest. A little bit weird. I mean, we're like entering Teron Armstead territory, even though I don't know if it's the same thing.
Well, I think it's a good thing that the Dolphins this year, unlike previous years under Mike McDaniel, are getting healthier as the season progresses, right? Austin Jackson and Darren Waller recently last week activated. So that's a good thing. Yeah, the Waller thing, whatever. My bigger deal with Waller is keep feeding this guy the ball. Yeah, I don't like to see one target in the second half. I don't like to hear they took him away from us. Throw him the freaking ball. What are you saving him for? He's 33 years old. There's only 5 games left in the season. Feed the man the ball. He helps you win games. And I don't know if Waller not getting the ball, being shut down, is more a play calling thing, more of a Tua thing, or more of a defense thing. But I don't really truly understand how they can consistently take him away like this. He's one of your top players. You've got to find a way to get him the ball. So really, that's my bigger thing with Darren Waller. It's not that he had the rest today. It's that what the hell does he need rest for? He needs the ball more. That's what he needs. If he was getting targeted 8 or 9 times, I could see the rest more. And I joke here, of course. I know that he's had a tough year with the hip and all that. I want to see Waller get more targets, more consistent targets throughout a game. That's all.
No, I completely agree with you. And the thing is, I know Mike McDaniel was very adamant about saying, I think he said it either after the game or on Monday, and he said it again on Wednesday when he was asked about Waller again, that he was very careful not to use his words, overcook him.
Right.
Played 28 snaps, 3 targets and 28 snaps for Darren Waller, who's not on your roster as a blocker. That's Julian Hill's job. Mm-hmm. So that's a little weird to me. And I'm not a huge fan of explaining everything to the defense took him away. So the defense took away Jalen Waddle. The defense took away Darren Waller. So what are the Dolphins going to do when the defense takes away Devon Achane?
Right.
I mean, at some point, if a team puts nine guys on the box, it's so. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. The other 2 who were limited were Aaron Brewer. He's a guy who's been playing through a whole bunch of stuff this season. It's like different stuff, I think, again today. Alec Ingold, who sustained a stinger in the game against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. And then the Jets had about 6 different players who did not participate, including Jermaine Johnson, who probably was the one who caught my eye the most. So we shall see where that goes. But as you mentioned, the Dolphins are getting healthier down this final stretch of the season. And who knows where that leads us in terms of being able to stack some wins. Big topic of conversation on this Wednesday was the Tua Scramble. He conducted his weekly media session where he slid, came up just short, and it brought up the inevitable, conundrum, dilemma of you want the guy to stay healthy. Be nice if you were able to do something other than do the baseball slide feet first, short of the first down, because that came right before Ollie Gordon too was stuffed on 4th and 1. So for you, Perk, are you telling Tua, I don't care about your concussions, go in there and get that? Sorry, no, right?
I'm telling Tua, be more aware of where you start your slide, how you slide. I thought it was interesting that McDaniel, he said that Tua was going to go head first and then kind of changed his mind. And I was like, wow, Tua going head first, that would be something with his injury history. So I don't know why Tua even considered going head first. And I would have to go back and watch the video again. I don't know how seriously Tua considered going head first. It looked to me like it was baseball slide, like 90% of the decision there. But the bigger thing I think that Mike McDaniel was trying to convey is there are certain times where Tua does need to go for it. And I don't know if he was saying this was one of those times, but I thought it was interesting that he kind of drew that distinction that there are times that you need to go for it, because a lot of the offseason, the message from Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer was slide, throw it away, don't take an unnecessary risk. Your team needs you so badly that it's essential that you protect yourself. And so, in a game against New Orleans, I understand you're still fighting for playoff position. I guess that was the time to slide. I mean, to go head first. I guess, but I'm not sure that Tua should be really considering going head first. If you've got the sideline as a boundary, as a protector, and you don't do the Jackson Dart and stay in bounds too much, then I could see him, trying to get the extra yard that way. But Tua going head first and making himself vulnerable to defenders to take a hit, I have to think about that. If it's, if you're 9-7 and it's the fourth quarter and you need 10-7 to be in wild card consideration, okay. Yeah. But boy, at this point, I'm not sure that I would advise Tua to really seriously consider a head first play.
No, I agree. The thing, my view of a head first play is not what he did against DeMar Hamlin in Buffalo in week 2 last year. Is basically like when he scrambled, he had one guy in front of him, is pick a side, and then
you do the Pete Rose slide, right?
Correct. Basically go straight into the ground at the guy's feet, either to his left or to his right. And obviously you hope that the guy doesn't match your reaction and winds up going down where you're going. All of a sudden that you have that collision. I think that's of the other part of it too is I saw the replay a couple of times. I wasn't crazy about the spot they gave him. I thought they were like very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of cheap on where they spotted the ball. I thought they put him like almost where he started thinking about sliding as opposed to where he started sliding. I mean, I don't know. That didn't look like a great call to me. I don't know. It's probably not something you can challenge. That may have. Oh, is that something you can challenge? Yeah, no, actually you can challenge it.
Yeah, you can challenge the spot. But you know what, Coop? It's one of those things where I've thought that part of the problem for Tua this season and recently both has been that he's probably got so much stuff going through his head, right? Sure. With the throw it away and slide, and you're talking to Mike McDaniel and Bobby Slowick and Frank Smith and Darrell Bevell and I think that play is kind of one of those things where Tua probably had too much going through his head is, do I go head first? And how do I go head first? And where do I start my slide? And this, that, and the other. Tua just looks so mechanical out there. He looks like he's thinking. And to me, that was a play that was kind of emblematic of that Tua's got so much going through his head. And even Mike McDaniel wasn't really clear today on what he was saying. So I can imagine there's probably the same amount of ambiguity when he's explaining it to Tua and Tua's just like, dude, what the hell am I supposed to do here? So sometimes I think less is more, and I think that's probably the case with Tua this season.
Yeah, and the way Tua was talking, because he was asked about his, very politely, was asked about his struggles against the Saints and the inconsistency, where Mike McDaniel pointed out play 40 and play 46 that would look like they were supposed to look. There were other plays that didn't look like that. And he was asked basically what was the difference between those. And Tua mentioned on the plays that worked, what happening was conviction. And on the play that didn't work is the feet were not aligned with the eyes.
Yep.
Which to me would be another symptom of, or another example of paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
He's thinking too much out there, and he's got and this is, I don't know, it's part of the issues that we're dealing with Tua. Speaking of Tua, it's an interesting I hadn't seen before, because we have seen, as I've said all along, even from the time Chris Greer was fired, or they parted ways with Chris Greer. Don't be shocked if it's Mike McDaniel again in 2026. My thought's always been it's going to be Mike McDaniel and Tua, and very possibly Champ Kelly as well. And national media folks, through their sources and then their tidbit in their columns, have said that consistently over the past 3 weeks. Several of them. There was a new twist today, or maybe it wasn't new, but I hadn't seen it before, from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, who was suggesting, I don't recall if it was him suggesting it or he'd heard that from talking to people around the league, that maybe it's Mike McDaniel coming back and a QB other than Tua. And I know the two guys from The Athletic who do the Athletic Show podcast also were like, would love to see what Mike McDaniel could do with a quarterback other than Tua. Are we at that point?
Boy, it's interesting. I think that Tua, to me, is what's keeping Mike McDaniel here. The Tua contract and not wanting to, pay Tua that, not wanting to take the dead money. And because Mike worked so well with Tua, that if Tua is here, Mike will be here. I do think it's interesting, and I was talking about this today in the media room, that I think to a certain extent, Mike's play calling was probably too Tyreek centric. I think that Mike has been more creative. I know, coming from me, that's a shocker, right? Who would expect that from me? I thought Mike was more creative last year going to the dink and dunk offense, which did have Tyreek. I think he's been a better play caller this year in the post-Tyreek era, after the Jets game when Tyreek got hurt. And we are seeing more of a run game, and that is partly, as you said last time, because they've had the lead. But I think it's helped Mike without that Tyreek crutch, because it was so dominant. Get Tyreek the ball, jet sweep or short pass or this or that. I think he's more creative. I think Mike would be a little bit more creative without Tua also. So I do understand what people are saying, is that, yes, it would be interesting to see what Mike could do with a quarterback other than Tua. But, man, I just go back to Mike had the best talent this organization has had in 2 decades, and he's basically a 500 coach. So he's had the best quarterback this franchise has had in 2 decades, and he's basically a 500 coach. So why am I going to think Mike is going to do less or do more with less? I've got to be convinced of that.
Okay, but I have circled here one thing, and the 2 points I want to make. I totally agree with you with Tyreek. It's forced him to be more creative. You cannot deny, however, that it's obviously affected the passing game. Yes. And it also has made a big difference on third down. Check out the third down numbers. They have cratered the past few weeks, and that at some point is going to be a problem. And then you mentioned the creativity that McDaniel has exhibited the past few weeks. He is starting to live up. You remember, he came to the Dolphins with his reputation as a run game genius and all that. And the Darren Orlovskis of the world is like praising him. I know he said the phrasing he used after the Washington game is that he saw a lot of interesting run concepts during the week, nothing like the Dolphins. Imagine if he had a quarterback who could bring a little bit of a running element and what he could do with that. Whether it's the occasional, keeper on the option. Certainly, if you get a bigger quarterback, then you have the option of the quarterback sneak on those 4th and 1s or whatever. It's interesting. But I still see no way the Dolphins are getting rid of Tua with that cap number. Do we see a scenario where Tua's a backup with a cap number of $54 million? Yeesh.
No. This was discussed in the media room today also briefly that
I wasn't there, by the way. That's
yeah. You weren't there, but I just I think that it's a couple of things. Number one, that's a huge number for a backup quarterback. It's essentially dead money. If he's not going to be playing, it's essentially dead money. And number two, if you do bring in a starter and he has back-to-back bad games, isn't there going to be a call for Tua to come in and rescue the season? And it's going to be a lot of pressure on Mike to bring Tua back. And, I just think it creates a bad situation. To me, we're probably at the point where it's either Tua is here as a starter or Tua is off the roster. I think that makes things a lot more simple for Mike, for the fans, for us as media members, because if Tua is there as a backup and the starter is ineffective, I could see myself writing a column saying maybe Tua should be the starter. That's the kind of guy I am. That's how I am. But it's a tough thing. It's a tough situation among Chip Kelly, Tua, Mike McDaniel, and Tua Salary.
Kelly, not Chip Kelly.
Dude, did I say Chip Kelly? Wow.
At least you didn't say Jordan Fuller.
Wow. Yeah, I know. Exactly. Chip Kelly. Yes. Chip Kelly does need a job, but Chip Kelly, Mike McDaniel, and Tua's salary. Yeah, it's just such a complicated situation. If you don't decide you're going to clean house, then you really muddy the waters there.
No, without question. And of course, everything is premature. The Dolphins don't need to make any of those decisions right now. They need to see how it plays out the rest of the way. And who knows, maybe Tua gets his game back on track, because right now I don't think it's a stretch to say they beat the New Orleans Saints despite Tua not, because I have 6 different categories of quarterback performance that would be a very interesting. Go back game by game and say, to me, it's you win because of the quarterback, you win with the quarterback, you win despite the quarterback, and then you do the same thing with the lose because of the quarterback, lose with the quarterback, or lose despite the quarterback if he plays really well, but you still lose. So in this game on Sunday, to me, is they won despite Tua, which is the lowest of the, no, it's not the lowest of the worst one would be you losing because of your quarterback.
And here's the other thing, Poop. How long, when you talk about if Mike had a quarterback who could run, how long will it take them to get that quarterback? Would they get that in 2026? Would it be 2027? And are you keeping Mike here if he's still a 500 coach? I don't know. I don't know either. Yeah, again, it's not. There's no easy answers here. Other than Tua getting hot in these last 5 games and playing at a, showing us some stuff that he hasn't shown us all previously this season. And then you get the confidence and the faith and you start to think, all right, maybe next year they could make a playoff run or whatever. But short of that, yeah, it's complex.
Yeah, and this is why it's frustrating when you see New England, which was a complete mess last year, turn it around that quickly because they absolutely nailed the quarterback early in the first round. And you see Buffalo, which is on a run. And by the way, there are reports that they claimed Darius Slay off waivers from the Steelers. They're probably not winning the division because I didn't know this, but I just the Bills play the Patriots when New England comes out of their bye. If New England wins that game, they clinch the AFC East, or New England can win the division by beating the Jets and the Dolphins, who they face in the final 2 weeks. Odds of that not happening, who knows? And for the Dolphins, it's now 17 consecutive years without an AFC East title. Yeah. At least it's not the Jets, who haven't won the division title since 2002, but it's bad. And with Josh Allen and Drake May in the division, again, this is not to suggest that it can't be done, because in 2023, the Dolphins were at the doorstep. It just reduces the margin forever as far as that's concerned. Quick programming note as we're taping this. and there will be no official announcement from the NFL because they're not going to announce something that's not happening. But I'm pretty certain that means by it's 5 o'clock, it's 5:30 now. Pretty sure this means now that the Week 15 Monday night game, the deadline was Wednesday for that game to be flexed out. No announcement, so the Dolphins will be playing Monday night, December 15th against the Pittsburgh Steelers as predicted, because NFL doesn't flex out the Steelers. But if you look at that crazy part, that has nothing to do with the Dolphins, but just a little TV note, side rant just for me. The schedule that week, Chargers, Chiefs, Bills, Patriots, aforementioned. You got Cincinnati, Baltimore, which is a huge game for the. However, all of those games are rematches. The first game of those 3 matchups was in prime time. CBS now has the right to hang on to all those 3 games. All those 3 games are going to be at 1 o'clock. And then at 4:25, you got 3 very good doubleheader games. You got Detroit at the Rams. You got Indy at Seattle. And you got, I'm going to forget the other one, aren't I? I'm going to have to put on my dorky old man glasses and look it up because I can't remember. Actually, I'm not going to put on my old man glasses. But there's another really, really good 4 o'clock, 4:25 matchup. But NFL sticking with Miami at Pittsburgh. The Sunday night game that week is Minnesota at Dallas. Dallas actually has now gotten good, but Minnesota sucks. But they're not flexing out the Cowboys, even though that decision doesn't have to be made until next Sunday, which brings me to Dolphins-Bengals. That decision doesn't have to be made until December 15th, the day of that Pittsburgh game. 6 days in advance. Obviously, what happens the next 2 weeks is going to play a role in this. There's one game that's an obvious to be flexed. It's Baltimore, New England. But if New England beats Baltimore, if New England beats Buffalo the day before to clinch the AFC East, then that game loses a lot of its luster. So maybe they wouldn't mess with Dolphins Cincinnati. I don't know. Personally, I'm perfectly good if they move it to 1 p.m. because I don't like night games. So
exactly. That's what we're rooting for as a media group.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so enough of that complete side rant over here. My man Perk over here wrote something today that you should check out at Sentinel.com on Jack Jones, who the Dolphins need to re-sign.
They do. And you know, Jack is an interesting guy. Yes. You know, he is one of 9 NFL players to have 4 pick sixes in his first 3 seasons. And I'm asking him about this, and I said, you know, you have a pick 6 against Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers, you know, 3 likely Hall of Famers. And you know, every conversation with Jack Jones is littered with 4-letter words. And so he's like, I don't care about the quarterback. I don't care about that bleep. And that doesn't impress me. It would be one thing if none of them had thrown an interception and I was the only guy to intercept them, but I don't give a damn about that kind of stuff. And you know, Jack is a very entertaining guy. I asked Anthony Weaver, you know, tell me about Jack Jones, and he laughed and he said, Jack Jones is interesting. He said, Jack asked me all kinds of crazy questions. We'll be in a meeting and Jack will say, Coach, I know you like that defense, but what if it's a night game? And we just shake his head and go, Jack, it's the same. Like the principles are the same, even if it's a night game. So yeah, Jack is an interesting guy. He committed to USC on a Snoop Dogg podcast. And he was telling me, yeah, it's not a big deal. Snoop grew up with my dad and my uncle. So I knew Snoop the whole time. And he played in the Snoop Youth Football League growing up out in LA also. He said that he really respects Bill Belichick, who drafted him in the 4th round in 2022 out of Arizona State. But Belichick is also the same guy who cut him after a year and a half and a week after Jack missed curfew. And Jack is telling me, I really respect Belichick and all this. And he goes, but Belichick probably hates me. I ain't going to lie, you know. And so he was very respectful of Belichick and very grateful. He said Belichick taught him a lot about the NFL. So Jack is just a very interesting guy. He's got a couple of arrests. One of I think a Panda Express restaurant, fast food place burglary charge after he flunked out of USC And so I'm asking him a bunch of questions. What was your first car? What's your favorite food? Have you ever had a non-football job? And he goes, non-football job. And he goes, no, that's why I went to jail. Real talk. I was like, wow, Jack. And so he was like, yeah, Jack is a live wire. He's a good dude, man. But they do need to re-sign him because, as I said in the story, he's got 3 of the biggest forced turnovers of the season, with the fumble against the Jets, the fumble against the Bills, and the interception against Washington. So he's a useful, serviceable player. That the interception in Spain, in Madrid.
No, I'm trying to remember the fumble against the Jets. It's the one.
That was the Braylon Allen at the 1 yard line where he punched it out. Yeah, the Dolphins were leading 3-0 in the first quarter, and the Jets would have taken a 7-3 lead. By the way, Jack Jones's jersey from the Madrid game is going to the Hall of Fame because it's the first interception in Spain, not because Jack did anything monumental, but first he did. He basically won the game for him, but it's not. He didn't set an NFL record, but so Jack did think that was pretty cool. He was impressed by that, but interesting guy, and I agree with you. They should re-sign Jack Jones. By the way, let me bring this up as we probably wrap up. I did,
I decide when we wrap up.
That's true. That's true. This is your show. I talked to Zach Wilson today about going back to New York and about his time in New York, and he was very good about talking about it. Said that it was pretty rough. You're the number 2 pick going to a franchise that hasn't had a whole lot of success. There's a lot of pressure on you. He said he wishes it would have gone better, but he did appreciate his time there in New York. So he was very appreciative of that. So it was a pretty good day in the locker room today. Got to talk to a lot of guys, worked my way around the locker room pretty well. I'll do something on the offensive line later, and the success that they've been enjoying recently. That that this is a group that I had a lot of doubts about them coming into the season, and now they've done very well as a run blocking group. They've shown some depth with Larry Borum and Cole Strange. They showed some creativity with Brunskill. So I'll be doing something on the offensive line. So nice job by the offensive line there.
That's promo stuff right there. Check it out. Perk at sunsentinel.com. And the other thing with Jack Jones is logically he should not be that costly. So this is why I think to me it's a no-brainer to sign him. He's a nice player who makes big plays, and he's cut down on the bad mistakes.
Yes.
He came this close to being on the wrong end of a really, really big play against New Orleans. But we talked about that the first game against the Jets. Obviously, this was a game where the Dolphins lost Tyreek Hill, and it kind of changed a lot of things. Some for the worse, some for the better, maybe. Because the passing game didn't get off to a great start. How different would it look right now if you still had Tyreek Hill? Don't know. Maybe that had run its course, though, the Tua Tyreek Waddle thing, and maybe the forced adjustment. And the forced adjustment also came because Darren Waller went on IR.
Yep. And
at that point, Mike McDaniel was like, I got to come up with something. Oh, let me go put Brunskill over there. And it's worked. And Brunskill, the number of snaps has remained the same. But, that was big. Quick nugget, and then we'll wrap it up. Pro Bowl voting early results were announced. The first round of results were announced. Dolphins have 3 in the top 10 at their position. Alec Ingold is 4th among fullbacks. Devon Achane is 6th among running backs. And Jordan Brooks, 2nd among inside linebackers. I would think Brooks and Achane are pretty good bets to make the Pro Bowl. And Mike McDaniel with some massive praise for Jordan Brooks today, talking about how very, very quiet guy who's basically, he says something, everybody just stops and listens to what he says. It was actually very, very interesting just how much he praised his leadership and all that. And this is a guy, again, the Dolphins restructured his contract to convert salary into a signing bonus. He's got one more year left on his contract with no guaranteed money. I think it's another guy, whoever comes in, I think this is a core foundational player that the Dolphins should absolutely make sure to hang on to.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that I really want to do with write about Jordan Brooks is kind of the brutal candor and the bottom line attitude. He's a nice guy, a classy guy, but apparently he's the one who drew the line on the Papa shot. You remember he was the one who had the guts to say that it was too cold in Green Bay and that they were afraid to tackle, and it looked like it affected them. And he's also the one who said Tyreek doesn't owe us an apology after Tua had said, yes, Tyreek kind of does owe us stuff. Jordan Brooks speaks his mind. It's not in a resentful, mean, look at me type of way. It's just very matter of fact. It's just who he is. And I have a lot of respect for that. The players have a lot of respect for that. And I don't think anybody has written about Jordan Brooks's kind of his candor. Just the brutal candor, not looking for publicity, not doing a look at me, look at me. It's just the way he is. He's a very no nonsense guy in a very no frills way. I've got a lot of respect for him and his attitude, and the players have obviously they picked up on this last year, I'm sure. But really, really good guy. I think he's somebody who belongs on this team.
No, like I said, to me, he's a foundational player. Yeah. I asked him right as they head into their bye. I asked him, like, is there any part of him understanding that you don't decide the schedule? Is there any part of you that wishes the bye wasn't coming this week? Because at that time you were on a 2-game winning streak and maybe you want to continue the momentum. He's like, no, we just got off a long flight here. We need the rest. So it's like, it wasn't the typical pat answer of like,
right.
You know, and I preface it by saying, because I don't want to hear like, no, we're just going to do what the NFL tells us to do. Because I understand that. I got that part. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up on this Wednesday. He is Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Check out his fine work at sunsentinel.com. If you haven't already seen it, check out his podcast, The Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk, on YouTube. And then as for little old me, check out the written content at MiamiDolphinsandSI.com, all for free. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. And it's going to wrap it up. We will be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow is coordinator day, and we'll see what happens. Y'all have a good one.